All right, we do want to move on now. Let's shift gears to another big issue, of course. That was yesterday. We talked a lot about today's Supreme Court ruling, but we've got to talk a little bit more about yesterday's big ruling on Obamacare. Here's Jen Psaki from the White House talking about it.
Well, there's no question there were some high fives and hugs and maybe even some happy dances. I'm not going to name names today around the White House when this decision came down.
Well, of course, there were a lot of high fives. You saw the pictures coming from Pete Souza, the president's personal photographer. Hugs with Joe Biden, Dennis McDonough. No hugs here today, Nick, on the set. We can give some high fives perhaps after the show, but still pretty astounding when you look at the way that John Roberts ruled on this case. One person talking about, just because the law may have been well-intentioned, does that not give the Supreme Court the right to say, to fix the law?
Well, the interesting thing to me is that what the court has done is it's decided that it knew what was in the minds of Congress and what they meant, not necessarily following the law. I've been looking at the Roberts opinion, and he writes that if the statutory language is plain, the court must enforce it according to its terms. So what could be plainer than subsidies can only go to those residents who are living in states where exchanges have been, quote, established by the state. But then Roberts goes on to say, when read in context, that phrase, an exchange established by the state, is ambiguous. Now that prompted Scalia in kind of a comical, cynical response to say, words clearly have no meaning to the Supreme Court to go beyond the written word and say, well, we knew what they meant. What could be plainer than exchanges established by the state than these need-to-be state exchanges?
Is there anything apparent today that we didn't get a chance to talk about yesterday as much that it's going to really change the way fundamentally the rest of us get our health care?
Well, I think that will depend on what Congress does. The truth is that for now, things stay in place. For the foreseeable future, those exchanges will continue, the subsidies will continue to flow to those individuals. We'll have them probably through this next season. But I think between now and November, when we head to that next open enrollment period, if Congress moves quickly, and they can, and now the Republicans and the critics of Obamacare have a reason to, we could see some changes as soon as the next sign-up period in November.
As soon as the next sign-up period. Now, we also saw this report yesterday from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, I believe, talking about the strain now that Obamacare is apparently having on access to health care.
Well, I think that's true. And Obamacare has clearly changed the rules of the game, not just for insurers, but also for the states and for individual consumers. It's certainly putting an enormous strain on the system, and we're just starting to see that move through. I want to make one other point we didn't get to, and that is that in some ways this Supreme Court ruling does continue to make the Affordable Care Act as written something of a political Rorschach. Mm-hmm. Over history, over the last 5 years, the president himself has chosen to enforce certain aspects of the law,
right,
and other aspects of the law not enforce. He's delayed many things and kind of picked and chosen which aspects of the law to enforce in a kind of executive privilege that many critics say go above and beyond the law. So my concern is that we seem to have entered an era where interpretation of what Congress passes in law is what holds sway.
And what we have also seen here is clearly the law that was passed back in 2010, it's evolved in its own form.
Sure.
Even though that was the law that was agreed to by Congress, it's been changed by the president. It's been changed now effectively by the Supreme Court twice.
That's right.
And what we're left with is what we got.
The upside of this is that there is a precedent for it, so Congress could yet again step forward and change it in a way that would be reasonable. I think even people who are proponents of Obamacare, certainly the folks in my sources that I talk to, are clear that it is a mixed bag and there are some downsides that need to be fixed. Even Bill Clinton has said that there are drafting errors and problems that need to be fixed. So the hope is that now we have the history that it can be changed, that some sensible solutions will come out, but we'll see.
All right, always looking on the bright side, Nick Tate. Not easy to do. Author of the Obamacare Survival Guide and Da Vinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide. You can get those both online right now.